Good afternoon and welcome to Riverside Middle School. Thank you all for taking the time to join us today to discuss the very important topic of vaping. Our goal is to engage families and to have a partnership with you to make sure that students are staying away from vaping. At Riverside Middle School, we have seen an increase in vaping this year. In fact, vaping is going all the way down to the 5th grade in this building. So it is just such a crucial, important message that we want to share with you about the health and wellness of students in our building and staying away from vaping. So thank you once again for being here. I'm going to pass the mic to Access, and they will get started.
Hello everyone, good afternoon. My name is Hala and I'm a health educator with Access. And yesterday we were actually here doing the presentations with the 8th graders, and we talked all about vaping, taught them about the effects, and then all the different reasons why teenagers sometimes begin vaping. So then we allowed them to learn about the harmful effects and then help them get the information they needed in order to make the right decisions. So trying to keep them away from it, and then also letting them realize that not all students their age are vaping, and so they should really learn that so they can stay away from any peer pressure and any need that they might be the only ones not vaping. And then tomorrow we'll also be here as well, and then we'll be addressing the topic with 7th graders, and then also talking about vaping and then different ways to help them stay away from vaping. And so for today, we're going to have this aimed for the parents, and you're going to learn a bit about all the different effects, some of the different reasons why teenagers are vaping, and then all the different kinds of ways that they could be hidden or could be used. And then at the end, we'll have a little conversation about how you can help them stay away from it, and then also giving them those skills and tools they need to learn that. And then we also have it translated in Arabic for anyone who needs the translations. So again, we'll look at some of the rates and then different tricks that the tobacco industry might be using that targets teens some of the times, and then going into the other reasons of the harms and then why youth vape. So we look over here and it shows the different rates of usage of different tobacco products, and then this is among high schoolers. And we can see that even from 2018 and over to 2019, the rate of vaping or electronic cigarettes has increased. And that is the most popular product that is among teenagers. And then there are many reasons why, and then we'll discuss a bit more. And focusing also on the middle school level, we were looking over at around 2018, and it had said that 10.5% of middle school students had reported using a vape, while with high school students it was up to about 27.5%. And looking over at these kinds of rates in comparison to adults, it was just at 2.8%. So we see that electronic cigarettes or vapes are more common among the youth. They're more common among teenagers. And there are a few reasons why, and then that's why our focus is so much on addressing vaping. We could talk to them about all forms of tobacco use, which we address, but our focus is really on the vaping products because that's what's being most commonly used, and then that's what we really want to address with the teenagers. There are many other reasons why teenagers are looking towards using vaping products, and I'm going to discuss a lot more later on. But these are some of the main reasons. So there is that marketing that's going on. It's targeting the youth. And the marketing is the advertisements that are used. It's the kind of product design. It's the flavors that they're using, social media, the kind of platforms they're using to advertise as well. And they're mostly doing anything they can to really capture the younger generations, same as what was done with cigarette products, regular cigarettes back in the past. So it's a different type of product, but it's the same kind of technique, same kind of marketing. It just has a different image. It has a different look to it. But we're really seeing these trends. They're happening over and over again, just as in history has happened. And then there's also this kind of claim that's being made. A lot of teenagers even told me yesterday, they had this idea that vapes were healthier, that they were healthier than regular cigarettes, or they were safer to use. And that's also part of how it's being advertised, how it's being marketed. It's made to look like it's a lot healthier, just because these commercials sometimes say they don't have a certain smell, or the flavor, or there's no ash like a regular cigarette. It's all these different marketing strategies that are really making it appear as if it's healthier. And the youth are really believing that. And then that's what's really driving the use as well. So we don't see too many teenagers now smoking traditional cigarettes, but we're really seeing that rise in vaping products. And then also it is affordable, it's easily reusable, and I'm also going to discuss about that later on. And then there might be other reasons why teenagers turn to vaping products. So for some reasons it could be as a way to self-cope, maybe with stress, anxiety, or symptoms of depression. Many teenagers might feel that this is a magical cure, a magical fix, and instead of really working to address what's going on, they might feel that smoking is a way to help deal with that. And vaping products in particular are extremely addictive. They're much more addictive than traditional cigarettes, and I'm also going to talk a bit more about that too. But this is just an overview of what we'll be looking more detailed into. And then from teenagers themselves, these are some of the different reasons they've given for vaping. And most of them began vaping because they just wanted to see what it was like. That was mainly the main motivation behind it. So they were just curious about it. They wanted to know what it would be like. Also, some teenagers felt it looked cool. Again, this is really the idea being gathered from media, from the kind of advertising that's going on. Similar with traditional cigarettes, they were made to look cool. The way the commercials were created, it's really trying to make them have this idea that if you vape, you'll have more friends or you'll look cooler. And then other students gave reasons. For example, they wanted to have more fun times with their friends, or they were just bored and had nothing else to do. So these are the different risks of what could really be driving the youth to vape. And then this was among 8th graders in a survey in 2015. And then other reasons are also related to family members or relatives or friends that they know of. And then they just see them using a vape, and then that's kind of this common behavior. So that's also a main reason why some teenagers turn to vaping. But also, there's these two reasons over here, and these are what really concern us the most. It's because many youth have said the flavors, the different flavors, so the cotton candy and the fruit flavors, are really what got them interested in vaping in the first place. And then also because they had this idea that they were safer or less harmful to use than cigarettes. So to look at some of the different strategies that are used to try to get youth to begin vaping or to get them to buy products is something called the youth marketing. And the kind of marketing that's out there, so different posters, different social media posts, different commercials, they're all designed in a way that's really going to catch the attention of youth. And in the first example, we see a commercial or an advertisement that looked like a comic book. So this was an actual commercial that was displayed, and it had this theme or design of a comic book. And then this was really geared towards the younger generations because they're more likely to read comics, they're more likely to be interested in this kind of thing. And so that was what was being displayed early on. Then you also see younger people, you see colors, you see different kinds of, like trying to make it look like it's healthy, someone who looks athletic and young. And all of this is really done intentionally, even if it's not being clearly said that this is for youth or this is being targeting to youth. It's really done subconsciously in a way. When youth see this, they can kind of relate to it, they can kind of identify with it, and then it kind of attracts them as well into looking more into the vaping products or to maybe identify with it more, to see that this is something people my age do, this is something that's common among us. And then the reason I'm going to be speaking about the different marketing is because this is really one of the major factors of why teenagers are turning to vaping in comparison to cigarettes. So why we have the question of why are youth turning to vaping products rather than traditional cigarettes? And it really has to do with the marketing, because we don't see this marketing for cigarette products anymore in the same way that vaping products have. So over here is something called point of sale. And if you go to certain gas stations or other stores that sell tobacco products, a lot of the time you're going to see them either displayed right behind where the cashier is. You might see them near some candy. You might see them right in your view. So that way, anyone who walks into that store, into that gas station, is most likely going to come across some sort of tobacco product and then some sort of advertisement too. So maybe they'll have posters, something that says they're on sale, or really advertising them in a way. So on the bottom picture, we're seeing that the tobacco products are near the candy, and they're right where a person might go to purchase something. So this leaves it with a guaranteed chance that anyone who steps foot there is going to at least buy a tobacco product. If it's right in their view, they're usually a smoker, so they might pick it up without thinking too much. Or the top picture, which has an advertisement right at eye level view. So we see a young child walking out the door, and the adult doesn't really notice this advertisement, but it's right at eye level for a child. So it's really trying to normalize the tobacco products, really trying to make it visible, and to make sure that everyone is able to see them in a way. Because when something is put at the point of sale, you might not really think of it too much. You might just purchase it right away without a second thought. And this is really meant to drive those sales and to increase any kind of sales. And then we also wonder, why are so many teenagers, why do so many people think that vapes are the healthier option compared to cigarettes? And so it's really also has to do with the way it's advertised and the way the public talks about it. So if we remember back with traditional cigarettes, a lot of the time they used to have billboards, magazine advertisements that said doctors recommend a certain brand of cigarettes. And this was meant to make it seem that these cigarettes were healthy. We trust doctors, so they can't be telling us something false. And so they would have this kind of technique used to let people think it was safe. And then we ended up getting more research, more information publicly known that cigarettes are harmful and they're not good for your health. So they moved away from that. The next thing that they're doing now is to advertise vaping products or electronic cigarette products as something that's safe, something that's healthy, especially with the vapes that claim to have vitamins in them. And a lot of the students yesterday even asked me about some of the different vaping products, for example, for melatonin. So this is something they would inhale and it helps them sleep. That's what it claims to do. But what a lot of the youth didn't know, and I had to clear it up for them yesterday, was that any kind of vaping in that form is going to be harmful because you're exposing your body to a larger amount of melatonin, and the brain naturally produces that. So when you're inhaling it, you're introducing yourself to a larger amount of this melatonin, and so that's really going to mess with the way the body's functioning. And I really had to clarify that for them because I don't want them to start thinking that vaping or any kind of inhaling of this is healthy. Because if they start vaping or inhaling the melatonin, electronic cigarette, they're going to maybe go on to other forms of vapes. And it might be that gateway to using a vape product with tobacco, with nicotine, and then also going on to other forms of tobacco. So with regular cigarettes, with hookah, or any kind of chewing tobacco. And then this one says that it has vitamin B12 in it. Again, it's another kind of delivery system, and it's called the vitamin vape. So again, we really want youth to understand this and to clarify to them that no form of this is safe. Because if they start to think that one form of smoking is safe, then they might go on to other forms as well. They'll start to ask, it's just water vapor, how can it be harmful? And then I really had to clarify that as well to them. And it's really all about giving them this information as much as possible so that way they know what kind of decisions to be making. Because sometimes they just don't know any better. So now to look at some of the different factors that really influence the reasons for teen vaping. And I'm doing all this so that we kind of understand what are some of the things that are attracting youth to the vaping products, because it has to be happening for some reason. So one of them was, again, because of the marketing, and then also because they think it's healthy. And so what we're doing is to educate them, to let them know about the harms, and that it's not 100% healthy. There's a lot of risks that can come with it. So here are some of the things to also be aware of that really attract youth, and especially the middle schoolers, especially the high schoolers, to vaping. Now, we can also ask the question, why aren't they turning to regular cigarettes? Why is it a vape? And so the main reason is because it's easy to use, it's easy to hide. A lot of them look like pencils, a lot of them look like highlighters, or maybe a USB, so they can get away with hiding it, carrying it with them, compared to a pack of cigarettes, or a lighter even. And then it's also easy to use. So for example, they're going to be in their room. It's not going to give off a strong smell like a traditional cigarette would. They don't really have to open a window. Some of them can even vape it anywhere else and not really get caught unless someone sees them. So there isn't really a strong smell that comes out of it. And that's one of the main reasons. Also, since they're disposable, a lot of them can just buy them and then throw them away. So they won't really get caught with any kind of vape with them. And then also with the pod-based vapes, so these are some of the other forms. We had this one. These are disposable, so that means they use it once, and then once it's finished, or they can use it as many times until it runs out. And then once it runs out, they don't fill it up, they just throw it away. And then these are relatively cheap to purchase also. And we'll talk more about cost and affordability too. But for a lot of them, there's also the pod-based ones, and then these are refillable. So the teenager could simply buy something that looks like this. Again, they look like pencils, they look like everyday items, but then they can fill them up again with something like this. So compared to before, the earlier generation of vapes, they looked like the ones on that side mostly. They were larger, bulkier, you couldn't really hide them, and they clearly looked like a vape. They didn't look like a pencil or a USB drive or anything. And then also to fill them up, you had to buy liquid. So they look like that kind of bottle. It's anything that can really catch the attention of an adult or of someone else. But now when we're turning to this, it's going to look a bit more like a USB drive or something else that won't really let a person think that this is a vape. And so that's also one of the other attractive features why teenagers are turning to these products. And then we see from a study over here, they actually conducted this study to look at different places or different ways that teenagers were hiding vaping products, and then spoke to a few parents to see if they could identify them, but they had trouble doing so. So for example, we see this picture, there's a sanitizer bottle, there's other school supplies, a tape dispenser. It looks relatively normal, so if a parent walked into a room or saw this, they won't really think too much of it. Then we see with the arrows, they're actually pointing to all the hidden vaping products. So those were different devices that were used. The yellow one might have looked like a highlighter, the one on top might have looked like a pen, or a highlight, or a marker, or a USB drive. But really, those were the hidden vapes placed next to the actual item. So at first glance, again, it's really easy to hide. It's not like trying to hide a pack of cigarettes or anything like that. And then because these vaping products are so affordable, that's also a main thing that's attracting the teenagers. Teenagers are really focused on cost, really focused on saving money. They don't have much to spend. So any way that they can get something that's affordable, they're definitely going to turn to that. And then there were even advertisements that tried to show how affordable vaping products were compared to cigarettes. And then it said over there that each vaping product is about 3 packs of cigarettes. So a teenager could purchase a vape, they could have someone older than them purchase a vape for them, and then that also reduces that risk of having to go back to the store to purchase another one. They could just purchase one and then use that over and over again for a longer time. And then that also saves them money, but also saves them that risk of getting caught purchasing it or having someone else purchase it for them. And then a lot of teenagers also find different ways to access vaping products. So they might have maybe an older friend, someone who's legally allowed to buy a vape, so 21 or older. Many times they see that they're buying that for them. There have even been retailers who hire, let's say, teenagers at gas stations. And then the teenager at the cash register is sometimes allowing the teenagers to purchase a vaping product. So a lot of the times there's certain retailers that are selling, they're not really following the law. And then we always try to, with our program, to try to go there to educate them to the retailer, and then to try to see if they're really in compliance. So are they not selling to those under 21 years old? Do they have the signs that they need to have to let others know that they check IDs for anyone who's under 21? So it's really also about getting to talk to these retailers to make sure that no one is selling to anyone underage, and trying to make sure that as much as we can, we track this down and limit as many sales as possible. That way less teenagers are able to access vapes, and that way we save a lot more teenagers from facing any of these consequences. And then again, the flavors. This was a major point of attractiveness to the youth for vapes. And it was even said that about 4 out of 5 teenagers who ever began vaping began vaping with a flavored product. So it's also the flavor that's really attracting the teenagers to the product itself. And it's also been done intentionally. So the tobacco companies create these products intentionally because they want teenagers to try it out, and they know if it was just a regular tobacco flavor, they won't really be willing to try that product out. So we introduce different flavors like bubblegum, some sort of pastry, some sort of candy, any kind of dessert flavors, and that's more likely to catch the attention of a teenager. And it also makes it easier for them to inhale the product. That allows more nicotine to enter. And then the more nicotine a teenager has, the more likely, or any person, the more likely they are to become addicted. And then once you have someone addicted to the product, then they're more likely to go back and purchase more. So it's really all about, for the tobacco companies, driving the sales, trying to get the money, and then the teenagers are left with a lot of the different consequences. And the major one is addiction. And we also worry about nicotine dependence. To have a teenager dependent to nicotine is really going to increase the risk of going on to other products or also using the product for a long time. And that can really lead to facing all those harmful effects. And then other reasons teenagers have given for beginning to vape would be as a way to self-medicate or to self-cope with something. So we know that teenagers face a lot of different stress, anxiety, any kind of symptoms of depression. But instead of really feeling like they can get, someone to listen to them, someone to support them, they usually turn away, try to handle it on their own. And when they realize that they can't handle this on their own, they might turn to vaping or any kind of substance use as a way to cope with that. So that's also been one of the main reasons given for turning to any vaping products. And then a lot of teenagers also had said that doesn't smoking help someone feel less stressed? Doesn't it help calm them down? And I really had to let them know that that's not the case. Many of the times it's going to be the cause of the stress. There's nicotine withdrawal that can happen if a teenager stops using the vaping product. And then they're going to face more stress, more symptoms of anxiety. And then as a result, they're going to need more of the product to feel better. So I had to also let them know yesterday that a lot of the reasons that they think, are true reasons for using a vape were actually incorrect. It doesn't help them feel less stressed. It doesn't help calm them down. And then that's a really main point to get across to them. So instead of just saying, staying away from these products, to let them know that it's unhealthy because it doesn't really help relieve stress. It doesn't really help relieve any anxiety. It's actually the cause of a lot of those problems to begin with. And it can make them feel a lot worse as well. And then when we look at cigarettes and vaping products, they're actually a lot more addictive. So that's also another reason why teenagers maybe can use a vape once and then they become addicted to it. They're hooked on that product even after one-time use. Or some teenagers said they only use it once in a while, so I can't possibly become addicted. But that's not the case either. So I also let them know that even using a vaping product here and there can still lead to addiction. And then I let them know that addiction has all those other harmful effects with it. So it's also making sure we clear that up for the teenagers, for the youth, to let them know that even using a vaping product once can lead to the harmful effects, and that they shouldn't really underestimate the effects that just one-time use has. And then when compared to a regular cigarette, the vape has the nicotine coming from nicotine salts. They hit the bloodstream quicker, and then again leads to a quicker and higher risk of becoming addicted when compared to a traditional cigarette. And then these are all the other reasons why the vape is more attractive to youth compared to cigarettes. Again, it can be used secretly. It can be used over and over again. That's also a major appeal to it. And then one device is equal to about 1 to 2 cigarettes, or 1 to 2 packs of cigarettes. So instead of having to purchase many of these products, they would just purchase one vape and then use that over and over again. And then, of course, we all understand the harmful effects that come with vaping products, with cigarettes, with tobacco products. And then this was just an overview of some of the harmful chemicals that are inside of a vape. And I also showed this to the students yesterday, let them understand that it's not just water vapor. So if a youth tells you that it's just water vapor and it's just flavoring, it can't be harmful, to let them know that it actually has a lot more with it. And even the liquid inside, that water vapor that they thought was just water, is actually made up of different chemicals, different kinds of flavorings that are already chemicals themselves. And when they're heated up, even more chemicals are formed. So it's all these listed over here. There's a lot of heavy metals as well. And anything in red was proven by the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, to be harmful. And when I showed this to the students yesterday, they were really shocked. I heard a lot of them say after that they had no idea that was inside of a vape. They thought the flavors were healthy and they were natural, so I had to let them know also that the flavors themselves can irritate the lungs. They're not coming from nature. They're not like candy products. And then many of them had said that the flavors were a major appeal. So many students, not in here, but many teenagers in general, began vaping because of the flavors that were available. So like cereal flavors or candy flavors. And we let them know that if, you don't need to vape to get that flavor. You can just have the actual candy itself, or you can have the cereal itself. Why need to have a vape that has that flavor? And so to go to the actual food product, not a vaping product flavored like food. And then there are some different signs to look out for if you might be worried that your teen is vaping or a teenager in general is vaping. And some of them would be that they have many excuses to try to step away, to go outside, to spend time alone. And then there might also be a sweet smell. So not similar to perfume, but it's like a sweet smell that's coming from their clothing, from their breath, maybe from their room. And to also look out for that. There might also be an increased use of some sort of air freshener, some sort of candles, anything that might be trying to mask another smell, to cover up another smell. And then there was also specific to vaping products, they might have dry mucus. And so that's because of the different liquids that are inside of the vape. They could really irritate the nose, the throat, and the mouth. So if there is a lot of dry mucus going on there, that could be also another sign. And then some of the symptoms of having the dry mucous membranes would be if they're drinking more water, if they're craving more spicy food, or more salt in an unusual kind of manner, or if they're facing a lot of nosebleeds or any kind of mouth sores. And then also to look around for those kinds of products in their room. So maybe you see a lot of pen caps lying around. To look closely, is that really a pen cap or is that a vaping product? To see if the USB drives are actual USB drives, are the pens actual pens, or are they the vaping products that resemble those products? And then there are other signs that come with their behavior, any changes in the way they speak or behave. Now, these could also be from other kinds of things going on. It doesn't have to automatically mean that the child is vaping. But if you see any of these signs, it's good to at least become aware of it and just to take the next step to speak with them. It might not be that they're vaping, but there could be something else going on there. So they could be facing a lot of anxiety. They might be more irritable, especially with nicotine dependence. So if they're not having enough nicotine, that could make them a bit more irritated, a bit more angry. And then they might also be having some sort of nausea or weight loss or any kind of stomach issues. And then there could be a lot of, a secretive attitude. They might have their door closed more often. Again, it doesn't mean they're hiding something. It could just be, part of being a teenager. They want their privacy. But it's also good just to be aware of it and just see what is going on. It could be that nothing's going on, but it's better to be safe. And then if their sleeping patterns have changed, or if they have some sort of cough, a raspy cough, any kind of chest pain, lung infections, is there shortness of breath, or is there any kind of pneumonia going on there? Also, something that many parents, we recommend many parents to look into, to see any purchases that are being made, especially on your credit card, or if they're having kind of deliveries being made to the house that you're not really aware of. A lot of the time, these products can be purchased online. So to check out any kind of purchases being made. If they're using kind of credit card or other payment apps, just to keep your eye out on that. And so there are many different things that parents can do. A lot of it is to learn more about the vaping products, the trends that are going on, how are the vapes looking nowadays. So you can have a way to look out for what do the products look like, what could be hidden in your child's room, or what could they be carrying with them. Again, many of us might not have known that they resemble other products. And so that's also a great first step. It could also be to understand the kind of friend group your child might be with. So, for example, if you see they're no longer with their usual group of friends that you're aware of, if they've changed friend groups, if they seem to be spending more time alone. Any kind of changes like that should just alert you and then allow you to take that next step to see what's going on. And then also to encourage them to have those conversations. So a great first step is to have a conversation with them, but to let them know that it's safe for them to speak with you as well. So if you want them to approach you about any problems they might be experiencing, if they are vaping and they want to trust you with it, to make it okay for them, to let them know that it is okay to speak about it, because we really want them to turn to you. We don't want them to feel more afraid or to isolate themselves more and then try to handle the problem on their own, because a lot of the time that's not going to work, especially if there is addiction going on there. So we really want the teenagers to turn to you. You're the person they can trust the most, and then they can talk to you about it, and you can help them with the next steps. And then there's also, in the case of any kind of addiction or any kind of nicotine dependence, to speak with a professional, to speak with a doctor, and then to also use some of the quit resources. So there are a lot of different quit resources online, hotlines and phone numbers to really get them the help to quit. And then again, the main thing is to speak with them, just to hear what's going on. And then after that, you can take those next steps to see how to handle the situation. If you do have any kind of questions around how do we prevent youth then in the first place from having these vaping products or from using these vaping products, a lot of it is increasing any kind of protective factors from that. So making sure the friend group that the child is with is a healthy friend group. It's friends they can trust. They're friends that are good to them, that don't really put them down a lot of the time. Because the kind of friends that a child has can really affect the decisions they make. It can affect how they feel about themselves. And if, for example, if a friend group is lowering their self-esteem, then the child might be more likely to turn to something else to make themselves feel better. So again, vaping is that high risk. They could turn to vaping to feel better, to cope with that. And then all these different risk factors are a really major thing. So maybe not just telling them not to vape or to keep them away from certain people, to speak to them about this, to educate them about this, let them know what's going on, and then really trying to protect them from many different angles. And then maybe speaking to your child about vaping could be a difficult conversation. Sometimes we don't know how to have these conversations. So these are some different suggestions. It's really good to start at a young age. So especially if they're in elementary school, they're not vaping at that age. It's good to start young and just to educate them about it, to let them know about it and about the harms and risks, and then to make this a continuous conversation. So it won't just happen one time, but to continue having these topics, to continue covering them, and then to let them know more about this, to equip them with the skills they need, the knowledge they need to stay away from this, especially as they get older, go to middle school or high school, and that can really protect them. And you can also find the right time to talk about this. It can be a sensitive topic to cover. And even if you don't want to directly address them, you could, for example, use something you see on TV as an example, or use a story to let them know about vaping. So you don't have to tell them, I'm concerned about you vaping. You can say, I've heard someone's kid was vaping. What do you think about that? Or what do you think about a person who vapes? Kind of getting their idea of it, their understanding of it. That can be a great way to speak about it too. And then a general kind of model to use is to prepare for the conversation, to approach them in a way that's compassionate, trying to understand from them, being open to them. And then to really do your homework about this. So trying to learn more about the different effects of vaping, any kinds of harms. So that way if your child asks you, is vaping harmful or what makes it harmful, you can let them know. Instead of scaring them, we let them know from the information, from the skills or the information they need, just so that they have a better way to say no to this. And so there isn't really one single approach to talking about vaping with your teenager or with your child. But again, it's going to be different for your parenting style, for the way you and your child speak, for your own family. And you use whatever approach is best to you. And then to also ask questions and listen. That's the main thing that I can leave you all with here today. And to really do a lot more listening than you do talking sometimes. Let them tell you what's going on, and then we can address it from there. And then let them know that you do disapprove of vaping, but to be really clear with it, to be really try to avoid any accusations, but to really let them know that this is the rule we expect. We expect no vaping. We don't approve of it. And then that kind of allows them to also be able to stand up to any peer pressure. They'll be able to know that this is something my parents disapprove of, and so I'm going to say no. If they know that they have a solid foundation to fall back on, that they know they have their family's disapproval if they do vape, that can really help keep them away from any of those behaviors. And then the major thing is also not to exaggerate information or to use scare tactics. A lot of the time, if we just approach a teenager and tell them, you know, if you smoke, you're going to face all these harmful consequences. It's going to be horrible for you. A lot of the times they might tune it out. They might stop listening or they'll take it as a joke. So it's really good to be clear with the facts, let them know, but not to exaggerate any information. And I like to leave everyone here with some different resources. So if needed, these are different quit resources that can be used. These are aimed towards teenagers. And the first one is by the Truth Initiative. And it's a free kind of text messaging program that a teenager can text, and then it helps them have different tips, different services that they can use to help quit any kind of nicotine. And then there's the Quit Start app, and it has also inspiration, different tips, and then challenges if a teenager is, dependent on nicotine and they might need some help quitting it, or you might want to help someone quit. These are really very useful. And we know a lot of teenagers don't like speaking on the phone. They prefer texting. And so the fact that these are text-based is really great, and it's really useful. So I'll keep those resources up, and we can take the rest of the time for questions, any comments, any concerns. And thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much. Any questions? I'd be more than glad to take you.
So what can we do for these vendors?
Mm-hmm.
We have local ones.
Mm-hmm.
I've turned in a few myself
Yes.
to the Wayne County Health Department. Why are you selling it
Mm-hmm.
to students?
Exactly.
Gas stations, right in the area.
Yeah.
I've taught so many of them.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I have older ones that are out of school now, but it's like, what can we do as parents?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, okay, I turn them into the Wayne House, to the health department. What happens after that? Do you know the process with that?
So as far as I know, we work on that side as well as reporting them. So we kind of see if they're in compliance. Sometimes we'll send, for example, with our youth group, we would send teenagers who are underage, but we try to see if the cashier would sell to them. And sometimes they would sell to them. After that, then we would report them, and then we'd have to put them through tobacco education or vendor education to let them relearn the processes, the different laws, not to sell to minors. After that, I believe they would have a warning or a citation. It can be found online. So that is a wonderful step, but it's like, what can we do in the meantime for the children?
They do random things like how you said you do.
Yeah.
Do they do that? Is there like
Yeah. As far as I know, that would be what we do. I'm sure there might be others doing that same work, but I'm not too sure. But to think about like... Mm-hmm.
They take the physics number at school.
Yes.
They deliver it to their home. So a new line has some doesn't go anywhere,
Mm-hmm.
but these stuff coming to the home does.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, and that's a major concern. Yes.
that is where's all the parents like?
As school here,
Hmm.
what you do to educate our children
Mhm.
on these things? Because
Yeah.
it starts at school.
Exactly.
Here,
Mhm.
all over.
Exactly.
And the peer pressure
Mhm.
in the bathroom. So at school, what you
So I was really glad that the school called in us from Access, and they brought us here to have these presentations. So yesterday, I did mention this before you stepped in here. Yesterday we began the set of presentations for the 8th graders, and so we taught them about the vaping product, the effects, how it's actually harmful, and then also we had them talk about the risks that come with it. So like law, with their law, if they're caught in school, they can get in trouble, they could have a fine, and then it could really put the parents in trouble too. So we let them know that, and they had no idea. So the big step is to educate them, to let them know. And that was something we saw yesterday was really helpful. A lot of them were shocked or had different questions. They had no idea about the harms of vaping or the risks with it. And then also, it's good, like what you said too, about different kinds of life skills we teach them. So how to say no to peer pressure, how can they increase their confidence, their decision-making skills. So that way we try to protect them as much as we can to make the right decisions, to avoid any kind of harmful things. So just as much as we can, it's all about educating them. And then again, it starts with the school and then it continues to their other personal life. So making sure each part of their life is being addressed, and there's someone on every side. So when they're at school, they're not being left alone, and then when they're home, they're not being left alone, things like that. Of course. Any other questions? Those were great comments so far. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Because education is key.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, I feel as a parent, I feel like our community is always hush-hush.
Mm.
I feel like the parents really need to step up.
Mm.
We can't always go back to the school. The school can only do so much. The community, we need to feel that it's okay to communicate to our children, to educate ourselves first, so we know how to approach it with our children. So it's all about educating and communicating.
Exactly.
And not saying, oh no, they're too young. Look, did you hear the assistant principal? Fifth graders. Fifth graders.
Important to start young, exactly. Exactly. And that's also a lot of the work we're doing too with I'm part of the substance use prevention program. And so we found it very difficult because we work in Dearborn and Dearborn Heights. We found it very difficult when we first started out to do our work, to have these conversations, because many community members, again, like you were saying, weren't really willing to speak about it, to speak about addiction or drug use. And so a great big step to take is to have these conversations as much as we can, to communicate with as many community members as we can, and hopefully carry on these conversations outside of here as much as we can to reduce that stigma, to begin educating, like you said too, because if we don't educate them, we don't give them the skills they need to refuse it later on. So if they don't know what a vape is, they don't know the harms, they're more likely to start using it, and they don't know how to resist peer pressure. So as much as we can to teach them these skills. Very good. Thank you. Of course. Thank you all. Thank you.